Hey, this is Brent Jensen. You're listening to No Sleep Till Sudbury, the show where we talk about the music that makes your skin vibrate. You can connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Brent Jensen Music, and on Twitter at RealBJensen. No Sleep Till Sudbury is brought to you by Pry Pickups. What you want, what you need, what you love. Check them out at prypickups.com. All right, this week we have a special guest talking to me about a special project that he and I are working on together. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Rob Preuss. Rob Preuss, my brother, how are you, sir?
I'm very well. I'm a little bit sweaty because I just came in from a run, but I'm good.
It's a good thing we're not doing video then.
That's why I was making sure we weren't.
Now, you are back in Queens, New York, and I'm still in Toronto. I've seen you, I've had the good fortune of seeing you a couple times over the last little while, and most recently...
In the last 2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, most recently with performing with Carol Pope in Rough Trade at the El Macombo here in Toronto. That was last Saturday night.
Yes. Oh my God, it's only a couple days ago.
Yeah, right. So that was funny because you've been here twice in the last little while. You drove up from Queens.
Yep.
And we talked about now. Oh, I didn't ask you this. Did you drive up through the Adirondacks or did you drive up the other way?
No, I did the other way. I did the way up around Syracuse, Binghamton, like up towards, and then crosses by Niagara Falls.
Okay. Yeah.
That's my preferred method. I know we've talked about the other way, and I feel like I should try it sometime and just see what the experience is like.
You got to try it, man.
I know.
Yeah, it's really great. I love it. Just going through the mountains is fantastic, especially this time of year. The leaves are starting to fall.
Right. I'm actually planning maybe sometime this fall to go up to Montreal for a weekend. So I'll get to do basically most of that same drive anyways, because I think you go up that way to get to Montreal too.
You do, actually. It's just an hour away from where I turn in to the States.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So the last time you were here, Rough Trade, what a show. That was so great.
Was it good?
Oh, God. You know, it's funny because you said, don't stand in front of me because you're going to make me nervous. And I was supposed to stand at the other end of the venue. I usually like stand just in the back, right? But it was packed. So I didn't want to kind of get hemmed in the back. So I actually moved over and I ended up right in front of you, but you didn't even notice until the end of the show.
I didn't look up one time, or I didn't look out, and I'm sort of glad because if I'd seen you, then I would have been. I know I wouldn't have been more nervous, but I would have laughed because, like just seeing people makes me go, oh yeah, I'm just up here doing this stupid thing that I always do, and it's just weird when I see people I know. I don't know, it's bizarre, but it was so much fun.
Wasn't it great? The crowd loved it, and it was funny. I told you after the show that Carol kept looking over at you because you're the only guy really on that side of the stage. And she kept looking over to you and she would smile. You know, she's very happy to have you there. But it's funny because you were all business. You were like, focused.
I know. I was like the new kid on the block, right? Like, and I was looking last night at the set list, and I learned 17 songs in a pretty short amount of time, which like they've done some gigs together, the other guys in the band. And so I was sort of like, filling in for Kevin Hearn because he's played with them as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't want to say no, and it scared the crap out of me. But I was so excited to learn the songs. But I just had to pay attention because I thought, man, this is like, I hadn't done it before. So I just wanted to get it all right. And even for me, when I'm paying attention and when I look like I'm like really seriously, like, that's still super fun for me. But there were times like sometimes I had to sort of take it in because I would just look over right beside me and there's Kevin Staples playing his keyboard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I look over and there's Carol. And I just thought, I just can't believe I'm doing this. Like, because I didn't want to linger in that thought for too long because that part of it is me as like a 14 or 15-year-old. Like when I just joined the Spoons and we were getting ready to make our first album, and Rough Trade were, getting all the airplay with All Touch, No Contact and all those songs. And I would listen to their records and think, oh my God, we're going to make a record. And like, I have this Rough Trade record and we're going to have a piece of vinyl soon too. And like, I would listen to it and listen carefully to like all the keyboard overdubs. So it was really like one of my foundational kind of things to start paying attention technically to how music is arranged in a way.
Oh,
so,
wow.
So like to be playing with them and sort of remembering these songs, it was like it was freaky and fun. And like, I'm approaching it now, like as a professional musician. So I understand it in a different way, but I can't help but sort of tap into that like innocence about it all too, which I love.
Which is great. I love that.
Yeah, totally. Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
And the band was so good too. Like
Oh,
playing with those guys, they're amazing.
I'm telling you, man, the sound was fantastic. It was so crisp. It was perfectly balanced. That you could hear everybody, and the band was crack. Like it was. You guys were super tight.
Thank you. We only had one rehearsal. I mean, the rhythm section, they played together, right? So, but we just got together on Friday and like we had a long day of rehearsal, but it was fantastic. But one other thing I must say about the new, El Macombo,
Hmm.
it is like state of the art sound in that place. Like I
Oh
think
yeah.
that's part of the appeal. The sound system for mixing on the floor for the audience is amazing. They've got the recording set up upstairs as well, which
Hmm.
is unbelievable. And Doug McClement, who was running the recording part of it all, I've known him for years. He used to do live recordings for Much Music and for radio broadcasts and stuff. And we've done so many things together, and it was amazing to see him again. But he sort of took me through like a little behind the scenes of how the place was put together, as far as like the type of flooring that they use and the art on the walls that is helping sound absorption and stuff. And it's just amazing.
That's cool. Things you wouldn't necessarily think about, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but when they were building it, they had that in mind because they wanted it to sound so good. So I think the thing now is that it's a little underutilized. Like some people were saying, like they just need to book more stuff. Like I think it's still ramping up. I think they're still getting it. The world is still sort of coming back as well,
Yeah.
and it's just amazing to know that this place is here when people start having ideas of things to bring into it, and they start reaching out for more ways to utilize it as well. It's going to be so cool.
Oh, for sure it will be. Definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was a good crowd Saturday night, so
yeah, for
yeah,
sure,
they're well on their way.
definitely.
Yeah. Now, you and I, my friend, are working on a very cool little project together. And while I'm not going to divulge all of the details per se until we're ready to put it out there, it's going to get you out in front of more audiences in a performing
Yes.
capacity again. And you're very excited about that, right?
Am I?
So well, it could be really cool. So there's a lot of really
No,
cool
I know.
surprises. There's some very notable special guests potentially, and this is an idea that we talked about like 5 years ago, and just kind of the background I think is pretty funny. So you and I had met in New York, and it was like Columbus Circle, I think. And
Yes.
we had a cup of coffee, and I was on my way to lunch with one of the guys from Twisted Sister. That was pretty funny, but we connected, and I was very appreciative of the fact that you actually came to see me, and we had a great chat. And we talked about this idea, and you had asked me, and kind of conveyed to me some stuff that you wanted to do, and I said, hey, you know what, you could probably do this, and then I want to say 3 months ago, 4 months ago, that was 5 years ago, but 3 months ago, recently, you sent me a text and you said, can I talk to you? And I was like, oh, is this dire? Like, what's going on? And you said, I want to like get on the phone with you because I want to talk to you about something. And I said, yeah, absolutely. So we had a call, and you said, remember what we talked about 5 years ago? And I said, yeah, yeah, yeah. Because we talked about it a little bit in the interim,
Yep.
but you said, do you want to do it? Let's do it. I want to do it. And I was like, oh
Yep.
yeah, buddy. And we're into it now.
Yep. We're getting into it.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. And again, I don't want to explain exactly what it is, but what it does mean is that Rob Preuss is going to be out there performing in front of people. And today, in the spirit of No Sleep Till Sudbury and songs that make your skin vibrate, you sent me a couple songs that might get played during the course of what we're about to do.
That's right. It's a journey through music. And yeah, you're funny because you're so right about that it was our very first time meeting was 5 years ago, right? And
Hmm.
you sort of proposed it to me at that point, and you're right. And I think as the time has gone on in the subsequent time, it has been something that has been bubbling in my mind, and I have been thinking about, and life gets in the way of like sort of trying to realize dreams, which is a thing that I think happens to everybody as your life goes on.
Hmm.
And you do things and you make plans and you have other plans, and at some point you have to sort of like just buckle down and do a thing. And I think with this, for me, I just got to the point of saying I don't want to put it off anymore because it's a part of me that I feel like I really need to get going. So
Hmm.
you're right. It's I think it's going to be really good, and I'm so glad that you're on the journey because I need a co-pilot, and you are my co-pilot.
I am extremely grateful and honored to be a part of this. Yeah, we're going to have a really, really good time with this. I think it's going to be awesome. And I think people are going to love it. So I can't wait to get it out there.
Me too.
Yeah.
We're being so cagey. Because we're not just saying we're going to just go and play some shows and whatever we're going to do, but because basically that's kind of what it is, right? But it's just, for me, it's a little, I think the reason that I've always held off on it is because I think, well, I'm not really like a front man. I'm not a lead singer. I've always been a part of a band,
Mm-hmm.
and like a collaborator with people, and like even being a music director for musicals and stuff. That's also in the capacity of leading the band for the singers or whatever. But I guess I've always realized that I still have something to share of my own,
Mm-hmm.
that could be like not a front man, but like the host of the evening, I guess you could say, right?
Yes, exactly.
So
yeah. And
I'm super excited.
That's just one of the reasons why I think this is so great. I'm genuinely excited about it. It's just such a great feel-good story all around, and this is going to be fantastic. Now, you actually created a Spotify playlist of the songs that may or may not be included in this project at any point, and they are all instrumental.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I don't normally. I mean, I know your lists are good with when we've done it before. I've been more free range, sort of thinking of songs, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But we've done sort of thematic things as well, right? Like with Halloween and stuff too.
That was fun.
But
yeah.
And I think I've always wanted to do an instrumental, because I mean I have hundreds of songs that, you know, instrumental music is classical music. It's easy listening music. It's the instrumentals on rock records. It's whatever. And I think it's like a world of its own. And so I thought it would be fun to just pick some for you and I to talk about as well. But yeah, there are some songs that I've always thought, God, if I ever do like a show of my own, what would it be, and what kind of music would I do? And I've always thought, I just want to play music that I love and that other people love, because I know we all sort of love the same kinds of things, you know. So this was just like a little sampling of some of them, you know. But you're right, some of them may or may not make it in, but maybe, who knows?
Well, we'll see. We're going to find out. Everybody will find out soon enough. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
The first one is, and by the way, you've got 7, but because it's such a cool project. No, hey man, I'm all about it. It's good. Trade Winds by Spoons is the first one.
I've heard of them. Yep. I had to include a Spoons tune as an instrumental because, well, actually, we had an instrumental on our first album as well, which is a super cool thing. I totally forgot I could have put that on my list, but it's okay. We only need one Spoons tune because that's me. Mm-hmm. But Trade Winds was the opening track of our second album, Arias and Symphonies, which in another month is celebrating its 40th anniversary.
Wow, congratulations.
Unbelievable.
That is.
Thank you. Crazy. And this song was our opening when we did gigs, when we did live shows. This we would play on a track, and then we would come out to this. This was like our theme music almost, you know?
Cool.
So this would be the song when the lights would go down and the dry ice would start pouring out to choke everybody. And we'd be ready to go on stage, and this would be the thing that would be playing, because on the album it segues. The next song it segues into is Smiling in Winter. Mm-hmm. So it was the perfect like live intro as well, right? And it was super exciting for us. So we never actually played the song live. We played it in this. Gord came up with it, like the basic idea of the song, probably when we were like a little bit in pre-production for the album, and he was like, I got this idea for an instrumental, and we kept it pretty basic because we said we'll just fill it out in the studio, which we really did, because we basically went in. Our producer John laid down the drum machine, and then we did the basic tracks. Derek played his drums, and then I spent like an evening with John, like layering all these synthesizer parts. Like Gordon sort of got bored and left too, and it was like just me and John in the studio. And for me, it was heavenly. It was heavenly because that's like, it was just fun to kind of layer it up. And John was sort of like pushing me to say, like, you know, okay, now try this part and overdub. Let's add another layer of this or whatever. So it ended up being like a really kind of cool thing. But I've always wanted to play it in a live capacity as well. So I've definitely thought, you know, for my project, it's something I would want to do a variation or a version of.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that as a fan. Cool. That's great.
Oh, yeah, I'm good.
That's great. Next is Wail by Split Enz.
For people who know Split Enz and they know this song, it's just a crazy instrumental. I mean, it's one of those things that people did in the 80s, you know, especially for a band when you got a bunch of players together and you, I mean, for Split Enz, they had a couple of lead singers as well. The two brothers, Tim and Neil singing, sort of trading off as well. I'm
Hmm.
pretty sure Tim was still in the band at that point. I think so, because at some point he left. Um,
Yeah, but I do remember him leaving, but then I thought he came back too. But
he totally did come back as well. You're right, because then, of course, because Neil, I think maybe I don't know. I don't remember the circumstances of him leaving or whatever. But this instrumental, it's like from an album that I sort of forget about sometimes. And when I come back to it, and I heard this recently in the summertime, and I thought, God, it's just fun, energetic, kind of crazy, quirky sort of new wave. It reminds me of Talking Heads a little bit as well. And I just think like this is a part of my formative Spoons/new wave era, in terms of like music that I loved and music that was inspiring me as well.
hmm.
And again, I just like listen to songs, and I listen to things that are meaningful to me, and I think, God, I want to play this. Like, people don't get to hear this kind of music. It's not like you're not going to wait for Split Enz to reform just to hear a song. And so I feel like I'm going to just grab music that I love and just play it, like, because I want to hear it. Like, I want to play it and I want to hear it. Like, when I was a little kid first learning pop songs, I would put the needle on the record and just play along, and that's how I learned sort of song structure and learned about keyboard parts and stuff. It was just me playing along with records as well. So
Yeah, and
this will be a chance to do these things in real life as well.
you know what I like about that is that it provides insight into you as a musician and a person.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. All the things I love.
Because you're such a narcissist.
All
See,
the music I love.
no, people know you, and I've spoken to other people about this. You're like, that nice guy in the industry that everybody, and I'll tell you something else. After the Rough Trade show, I waited around for you, and people rushed you with old Spoons vinyl and Honeymoon Suite posters, and
I know.
you had time for everybody. And I've always known you to be so gracious and so interested in interacting and connecting with your fans, and I just think that's so fantastic.
To me, that's like the most important thing after all these years. I feel like the thing that I look most forward to is seeing people that I may know or that I may be like friends with online that I've never actually met in real life.
Hmm.
And it's the coolest thing. I mean, I was even excited to meet the guy who basically is who booked the gig, Ed Sousa. Ed, is so beloved now by so many fans in Southern Ontario because he's booked these amazing shows for people to come and see, right?
Yeah.
And he's got a couple venues that he's booking into. And I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to just meet Ed even. And I know so many people that, like, the fans who are coming to all of his shows, they all know him and love him.
Hmm.
And I totally see why. And it was so great. We've got to have dinner before the show. And some of the people that are working with him are people that I've been friends with on Facebook for years as well. It was great to see them in the real life. But then like people to show up with old Spoons vinyl and Honeymoon Suite stuff. And there was another guy who waited for me outside after the show who didn't even get in because he was going to, I think he went to a screening at the Toronto Film Festival, or he was at another event.
Mm.
But he waited for me at the elbow because he knew I was going to be there, and he had like some Spoons of vinyl, like some covers to sign. And he also had a poster for Lethal Weapon. He wanted me to sign. He got the guys in Honeymoon Suite to sign the like a film poster, and because that's like his favorite Honeymoon Suite song. And then he also had a poster for me to sign, which I laughed because I'm a little bit embarrassed to sign some things, and I'm like, okay, I'll sign this Bohemian Rhapsody poster. But I guess I am sort of a part of the film. And the only other signature on it was this guy, Jim Beach. Do you know who Jim Beach is?
I've heard that name.
He was like, well, he was Freddie Mercury's personal assistant, and like a personal assistant to the band. And his name would be like one of the few thank yous on Queen albums. It would be like, it would be the band, and then the producer and the engineer and the studio assistant, and Jim Beach was always on there. And so I just was so honored, like, and just like freaked out to like be one of two signatures on this Bohemian Rhapsody poster. I just thought, man, what a weird world we live in, that I'm even somehow connected to having my name on a piece of cardboard next to Jim Beach,
See, but that's very cool. But that's also a fan who's really doing his homework, because you were the guy who was tapped to show Rami Malek how to play piano like Freddie Mercury in their documentary.
Right.
Which is cool.
It is so cool. But I do, like I said, I realized that connection to me has become so important over the years, because it's so many years, like we're talking, 40 years since these. And actually this guy, Steve, who I signed the poster for, he saw me with the Spoons at the Elma Combo 40 years ago. In the
Wow.
summer of '82, before we released, so Nova Heart was going up the charts that summer, and we were recording arias and symphonies, and we were getting ready to play the Police Picnic.
Hmm.
So that was going to be like a huge gig for us, right, to play at the CME Stadium with the Police.
Yeah.
And we had booked this gig at the Elma Combo, which I think was in June of '82, and I guess Steve said he was at that show. And the other guy that was at the show recording us was this guy Doug, who was in the Elma Combo now today, like doing the modern technology, like with the sound system and the recording setup he's got. He recorded us for Q107 or whatever it was back in 1982 as well.
Wow.
So it's all these full circle parts of my life where we were all kids, like the fans of the band. We're buying the records, and I'm running into them now, and I feel like we're all coming back together to sort of celebrate the music, and we're making the music, and I feel like that's such an important part. And that comes back to like you and I sort of conceiving this show and this project that I want to do, where I sort of want to just celebrate all of the music that we love. Me playing the music, and it's like I've said to you, like I sort of joke about like, oh, I'll take requests from people, because I sort of feel like we all love the same music, right? And if somebody calls out a tune, then I'll be like, yeah, sure, I can try to, if I know it, I'll know it. If I don't, maybe I'll play like 5 seconds of it. Like the dude at the Rough Trade Show who kept yelling out for High School Confidential. And Carol's like, you know it's coming later. Like, stop yelling out for it now. Because
I was kind of hoping that she would say, oh, we're not going to play that one tonight.
Right.
That's
exactly.
It's not in the set list tonight. And the funny thing that she did say was, she said, we have other songs.
Right. Exactly.
She's funny.
Oh my God. And we were in rehearsal, we were prepared, not really prepared, but they have a song that wasn't really a radio hit, but it was like one of their first songs. It was even, I think it was on their first album, and it was on this live direct to disc thing that they did. It was called Birds of a Feather.
Mm-hmm.
Super cool song. And I think Carol never really wants to do it live, but Kevin Staples sort of was pushing a little bit. Like in rehearsal, we kind of jammed it a little bit, and it was so fun. And Carol's like, I don't really want to do that song. And Kevin sort of thought, maybe if somebody yells it out, maybe we'll like kind of go into it a little bit. And so it was fun in rehearsal that we sort of prepare it, but not really. And then we ended up not doing it. But I think Kevin, he's sort of like me in that way. I think he thought it would have been sort of fun for the fans to like hear a snippet of it. And we didn't end up doing it, but I feel like that's sort of the way I feel about music sometimes. You want to feel like if the moment is right and it strikes you, you just go for it, because it's just fun, like it's
That's
just
right.
music.
And people love that because there's no safety net. That's like one of the basic tenets of rock and roll, really, right? You don't know if it's going to go off the rails or not, and that's part of the excitement.
Totally, like the Taylor Hawkins tribute, right? Like,
That's
oh my
right.
God, like 6 hours of flying by the seat of your pants on a stage in front of tens of thousands of people. There's nothing better than that.
Exactly.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah. Your next tune is a Jackson in Your Kitchen. I hate when that happens. It's Gary Clark. What is this? I've never heard this before.
What does that even mean?
I wondered that too, because I know nothing about that song, and I thought a Jackson in Your Kitchen can't be good, can it? Or is it? Maybe you're a Jackson's fan. I don't know.
Maybe. And I think that after I saw that title and I did look it up, and I think it meant something, and I think that now I'm remembering that Gary Clark himself told me what it is. So here's the story about this weird song.
Okay.
Gary Clark was the lead singer in a band called Danny Wilson, who, I say this name to you, it means nothing to you, because you'd be like, I don't know, Danny Wilson, that sounds like the name of a guy.
Right.
But this was the name of a band. So they were a Scottish band, and they had a big hit in the summer of '87 called Mary's Prayer.
Okay.
So even as I described that to you, your mind is still blank, because maybe you don't remember that song. And whenever I see the name of the song, I think, I don't really think I know that song. And then I listen to the song and I go, oh my God, that's Mary's Prayer. Oh, now I can recognize why it's called Mary's Prayer. That's Gary Clark. So it was a Scottish band. He was the lead singer and he was the songwriter in this band. I got to know him because he wrote the music for a film musical called Sing Street.
Okay.
Sing Street came out sometime in the last 10 years, I want to say. And the film was written and directed by this guy named John Carney, who wrote and directed the musical Once, which featured songs by Glenn Hansard, and won the Academy Award in 2007 for Falling Slowly. And that was the film that they then turned into a musical, which I was a part of as a music supervisor on the show. And so anyways, Gary Clark they took this film Sing Street and they decided to turn it into a musical, like a stage musical. And it's actually, so we started working on it pre-COVID. I met Gary like in January of 2020. We were doing auditions for the show because it was going to be running in the theater off Broadway.
Okay.
And so I met Gary, and I thought it was super cool. He was a super cool guy, super excited because he's never really been involved in like live theater. So to take his songs from the film and be having kids sing them in auditions and stuff was super exciting for him. So I was doing research on him and his career, and I learned about this solo album that he had done in the 90s. And he had this little solo piano piece called A Jackson in Your Kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought it was the most beautiful thing. So that's a long freaking story to come around to say that I learned the piece of music. It's a beautiful little solo piano piece.
Yeah.
And when I heard it, I learned it and I played it for him in the rehearsal room. He was sort of touched because I told him how much I loved this, like what this piece of music meant to me. And he just thought it was super cool because he made this album ages ago and, he did it and he sort of forgot about it. But to me, this was like the most beautiful little piece of music. And so I said to him, even like 2 years ago, I said, I'm going to play this thing. I'm going to if I ever do like a solo show, I said, I'm going to play this thing because it's just a really pretty piece of music. So That's what it is. That's the long story for a simple piece of music. But apparently the name A Jackson in Your Kitchen is related to, some jazz band, like the Art Ensemble of Chicago or something. They had a song that had a similar title. And I think he named this little piece of music as a reference to this obscure piece of like jazz music or something.
Okay.
Oh my God, this is the longest story for the shortest piece of music. I'm going to go into this level of, when we do this live show though, I'm going to go into this level of boring detail with everything. Just to drive people. The evening is going to be 6 hours long. It's going to be like the most tedious, like, why is he talking about these details in this song that I didn't really think I'd ever want to know, but I'll make it really interesting. And then I'll play the music and then it'll all make sense.
You'll be like, wait, come back. There is music. Wait.
That's right.
Don't leave.
Where are you going? Honestly, this is interesting. It's like Steve Martin used to have this routine where it would be like jokes for plumbers. And I don't know if you'd ever remember that. It was like the best part where he would like tell the joke written specifically for plumbers, joking about the wrench and having the right socket and all these things. And it's like, that's who I am.
Okay. This next guy I have heard of. His name is Andrew Lloyd Webber. And the piece of music you've got here is called Entr'Acte. I learned something about this from you, actually.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. Remember that?
It's the beginning of Act 2.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. I did not know that before.
Yeah. And the history of it is, I guess it's probably, if it's just a musical theater thing or a French musical theater thing, but really it's the beginning of, it's always, so the start of the show is always called the overture. And then the start of Act 2 is called the Entr'Acte. I mean, now, today they'll call it opening of Act 2 sometimes, but of course, Andrew Lloyd Webber in the 80s wanted to keep it pretty theatrical, traditional theatrical sounding.
Yeah.
So he called it the Entr'Acte. But I've always loved this piece of music because this is the start of Act 2. And in Phantom of the Opera, there are so many beautiful themes of music that are woven through the show. They come back, he repeats a theme 10,000 times so that you can never forget it. Yeah. And it's stuck in your head, which is like what a good pop song should do. Andrew Lloyd Webber does it over the course of an entire evening, which is why some people love to hate him and some people love to love him. His melodies are beautiful and they're simple and they really are unforgettable. But I appreciate a thing like the Entr'Acte for Phantom of the Opera because in like 3 minutes, oh my God, it's even shorter than that. No, it's about 3 minutes. But you can get through all the greatest parts of what you've just heard in Act 1. And he sort of says, so the Entr'Acte, the job of Entr'Acte is to say, this is what we've heard so far, and we're starting here, and here we go from here. To me, it's like a super fun thing. I've played it before, like on piano, when I used to do the Phantom of the Opera, when I did the Canadian tour, and we would go into each city and we would have to do the tech rehearsal to be in the new theater, and we'd bring the actors on stage and, run through it all and make sure the spot lighting operators know what their cues are, and we'd have to do a tech run through of the show. And we never really had to play the Entr'Acte because that's just music, but our conductor sometimes would make me do it just for the timing of the whole show.
Mm-hmm.
So the understudy actors could get a sense of how much time they had backstage before Act 2 really began. And I would always say, yeah, let me play the Entr'Acte because it was my favorite thing to play because it was just like an instrumental thing. So I feel like it's one of those things I probably would stick into my show, whatever my evening of music ends up being. So once in a while, it'll be fun to throw this in because it's pretty beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, well, it's a great way to welcome people back after the intermission. It's like a
For sure.
little
That's right.
review. Okay, here's what we know so
That's
far.
right.
Here's where we're going.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh, I could make up my own Entr'Acte too. I can weave together like Spoon songs or
Honeymoon
Honeymoon Suite
Suite
songs
songs.
and make. Oh, that's a great idea.
See, it just keeps getting better and better and better.
It sure does. Oh man.
All right, this next one you're going to have to help me with. It's Gary Numan, but it's Trois
Uh-huh.
Gymnopedies.
Yeah.
First movement.
I'm never sure how to actually pronounce that word.
Is that actually a word? Is it?
Well, it is. Well,
it's a French word.
You know what? I don't remember now if it actually does mean something other than it's known as a piano composition by this French composer named Eric Satie.
Mm-hmm.
Eric Satie had this piece called the I don't even know exactly how to pronounce it because I've heard many different variations on it. But he wrote these 3 solo piano pieces in the late 19th century, like apparently in 1888-ish, he had written them. And I studied them I learned them when I was probably 13 or 14, I guess.
Wow.
And in the Royal Conservatory, like as I was going through the Royal Conservatory method, this was like my grade 8 or grade 9 piano. Like you'd have to learn different pieces of music from different eras of, like the Romantic era and the Baroque era and the modern era. And so Eric Satie was coming in the era of like the sort of the French Impressionists with Debussy and stuff like that. And I fell in love with this piece because it was so simple. I never wanted to play music that was really too hard. I mean, like I knew I wasn't like wanting to be a classical pianist in that way of like super fast flourishes and like, having super technique. I didn't want to be showy. It's sort of the same reason I guess I never got into prog rock. I wasn't interested in solos and I was interested in like that kind of to that degree. You know what I mean? Like, so I always veered towards music that was challenging, but not too challenging, but super beautiful, which is, I think the French impressionistic piano music just struck me at the right time in my life. Like, I don't know, there was something so beautiful about it. And so this piece of music was something I was working on. And at the same time, freaking Gary Numan did an instrumental version of it, which is this one that is on my list. It was the B-side of one of his singles off of his album Telecom.
What a weird coincidence.
What a weird coincidence. And for me, in the world that I was now immersed in, like the new world of new wave, which was becoming more electronic and more synthesized. And here I am in my own classical music world, learning this piece of music. Actually, the piece that I was learning was Gymnopedie number 1. No, it was number 3. Gary Numan did number 1, which subsequently I've learned over the years was really kind of the more popular one because it's a little more melodic. The melody is a little more memorable as well. I think with my piano teacher, I was learning movement number 3. But I mean, they're all beautiful. But yeah, so Gary Numan did this. This was the B-side of one of his singles.
Wow.
And so I freaked out because I was going to my piano teacher playing number 3, and I was like, holy crap, Gary Numan did number 1. So I learned how to play it. And it was a solo piano version, but he like layered some synthesizers. I don't think he actually played the piano part. I think it was his keyboard player that did it. But Gary added the synthesizers to it as well. And it's just gorgeous. So since I was 15 or 16 years old, I was like, oh my God, I've played this song and I played Gary's version of it. And I played the actually composed by Eric Satie version of it. So it's probably been in my mind all these years that like, this is like something that I want to do is like play music that sort of merges these worlds together, you know?
Yeah. Because I know that you're a big Gary Numan fan. So that's very cool. Wow. Interesting.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. Elton John is next with Song for Guy. Yeah.
Yep. Not again, but this is a song that's been in my life since whenever that album came out. It came out in 78, A Single Man. So this was on his album, A Single Man. It's almost getting to the years. Well, Elton's never really, I mean, if you're an Elton John fan, he had songs on the charts basically every year, right through the 80s and onwards. But I think for me, this album, A Single Man, I wouldn't say I was losing complete interest, but I was definitely broadening my horizons from the Elton John that I was in love with from 1974. So this instrumental was like maybe the last song on the album or like near the end of the album, and it's just such a beautiful piece of music. He had written it for, it was like a bike courier at the recording studio who died in a accident or something, and I
Wow.
think he dedicated this to this kid who worked at the recording studio. I don't remember the whole story, but it's something like that, and it's just such a beautiful piece of music. And I just thought, man, this is again like an instrumental that I just want to play. And I think there are instrumentalists over the years who've done this, and it's been done because it's Elton John. It's just beautiful, and I just have always had it in my frame of reference for instrumentals that I would love to do. Elton had a few instrumentals earlier in his career as well. Of course, on Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, he had the whole album open with Funeral for a Friend, which led into Love Lies Bleeding. That is like one of the best moments in all of Elton's recorded career. It's like one of the coolest things. And I was almost going to put that on my list as well, but I thought, nah, it's a little too epic. Like I wanted to keep it a little bit simpler in some ways, but that is absolutely something else that I would add into my list of things that I would want to play for myself.
Well, I love the educational aspect of this because I didn't know this. And Elton John's got a huge, deep, and vast catalog, like stuff like Tumbleweed Connection and songs that you may not have known about. And I love everybody who listens to the show knows that I'm a huge deep cuts person, and you got to dig through all of the greatest hits to get to sometimes some equally good stuff. And so I'm glad that you picked this.
Good. I'm glad you didn't know it.
No,
That's awesome.
I didn't.
But what I love too, like you said, like especially with a guy like Elton, like the deep cuts are the coolest for the fans. I guess that's true of any musical act or any musical performer or whatever, right? Like there are things that not everybody knows, but everybody who loves them will know. What cracks me up is I'll sometimes post a piece of music on Facebook, like something that we all love. Like if you were listening to music in the 80s at some point, and we all loved certain types of music, and so we all have these frames of reference. And sometimes I'll post something that may not have been a huge hit specifically, like maybe a band had other hits, but I'll pick like a deep cut and I'll post it. And then sometimes people will comment and say, man, that band was really underrated. And I always feel like if you love something, it's not you're underrated. Like what? I don't even really understand what that exactly means in some ways, but I think it's because I've always, at different points in my life, I loved music that may not have been like a quote unquote mainstream act. That was never the goal of loving music. Like you discover music because it's good music. And if nobody else loved it, I never cared. Like I would think, man, that's like really cool, because then that's sort of how you pick and choose your friends. Like if you talk to somebody, and that's like one of the hallmarks of a friendship is like you mention a band, and like if somebody goes, oh my God, I love that band, and then you're like instant friends. That's all that matters, right?
Oh, totally. And you know what, to that end, I actually prefer that kind of music. I've never been a big fan of the popular kind of, I guess you'd call it rated stuff. I like stuff that kind of is under the radar.
I will never forget the summer of '85 when Tears for Fears went to number one on Casey Kasem's Top 40. I kind of shed a tear.
Why?
I was so happy. I was so happy for them, and so disappointed that the whole world knew how good Tears for Fears was. I remember I was in my car with my girlfriend listening to the countdown, whatever night it was maybe Sunday nights or whatever, right? And I was so excited and proud that Tears for Fears were like, oh my God, America knows who Tears for Fears now, that knows who they are. How cool is that? But at the same time, I thought, man, the secret is out now. For we who knew who they were since The Hurting in 1981, 82, I guess it was early 82, it had been years of like, this is our band. We own this music. Like, no, if you don't know who Tears for Fears are, then, you don't know what you're missing, but you gotta get with the program. But it was never about like just hitting the top of the charts. But I was realizing that the music that we loved, that was like sort of our music, was becoming the mainstream as well. And I mean, all these worlds were converging, and I was super excited and super proud. But I remember that feeling of like, oh, now we have to share them with the whole world. But it's super cool. But it's that thing of calling something underrated in that way that I always thought was kind of funny. But this comes back to the deep cuts from artists who are superstars, that when you love a superstar, you love the deep cuts, because it's not about the song that goes to the top of the charts. It's about the song that means even more to you, because it's the song that they put on side two, like the middle of side two, because that was important to them, but they just wanted to get it all out there at the same time, you know?
Yeah, yeah. No, I totally agree. And I love that point about, being sad and happy at the same time for an artist that you held in a very personal regard. And I remember going through that with
Yeah.
Metallica. Metallica
Oh,
was,
sure.
people used to laugh at me for listening to Metallica. I wore the t-shirt to school when I was in high school one day, and people were like, "Ugh, headbanger." Like, come on, man.
Yeah, right.
And then, one came out, but then the Black Album came out and people were so excited about like, I don't know, Nothing Else Matters and what, but I felt like the band wasn't mine anymore. I was happy for
That's right.
them that they were so
Yep.
warmly received, but at the same time, it was like, oh, the gig's up. Like they don't belong to me anymore. Now they're everyone's.
That's right. It's exactly the same. That's totally right. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because on the other hand, on the other side of shedding a tear from my band, I
Mhm.
would feel a little bit of guilt falling in love with a band that I knew I'm basically jumping on the bandwagon for. And
Mhm.
Metallica is exactly one of those bands, because summer of 92, no, first I fell in love with Metallica. For me, I fell in love with them at the Freddie Mercury tribute concert.
Oh, okay. 91.
That was the day of awakening for me, because that show sort of reawoke my rock and roll heart, which was like the same thing that happened to me watching the Taylor Hawkins tribute a
Mhm.
couple weeks ago. So when the Freddie Mercury tribute concert happened, I was so sad because Freddie had died, and I was so excited that this was going to be this day of tribute to him. And I fell more deeply in love with Extreme. I already loved More Than Words from the year before, but I wasn't a huge Extreme fan. But I was bit by bit going, man, these guys are really good. I couldn't deny the hit of More Than Words, of course.
Right.
And when they opened the Freddie concert, I was like, man, these guys are amazing. And then I fell in love with them at the end of the year when they released Three Sides to Every Story. And that album, to me, that's the final side of that record, is one of my favorite things of the 1990s.
Oh, wow.
And then Metallica came out and played. And did they also play? I think they played Enter Sandman as well. I think they played Queen songs, but I think they started with Enter Sandman. Am I wrong?
I don't remember that. I don't know. I know they played Stone Cold Crazy because they covered that.
They sure did. Yeah, they sure did. But I then maybe they didn't. For some reason, I feel like they played Enter Sandman. Maybe not. But when the Black Album came out, and I remembered how good they were at the Freddie concert,
Mm.
and maybe just was that I heard Enter Sandman on the radio and I loved it. So then my association with Metallica was the Freddie concert, and then I was on the tour. I was on the Phantom of the Opera tour, and I was driving out to Calgary for the summer. We were at the Calgary at the what's the center called? The theater there's one in Edmonton and there's one in Calgary, and I can't remember the name now. Damn it, because I played there with the Spoons as well.
Mm.
I'm very embarrassed for the listeners in Calgary and Edmonton that I've forgotten the name. But anyways, I was driving out there to do Phantom, and I was driving to I had like an apartment hotel, like a first apartment, and the day I arrived in Calgary, Metallica were playing at the Saddledome.
Oh.
Are you kidding me? I got to my apartment, I unpacked my car, and I went right to the Saddledome, and I got a ticket to the show. And I was an instant fan. But anyways, this is another one of my endless long stories to say that when Metallica, I bought I listened to that Metallica album driving out to Calgary, and I felt a little guilty because I thought, I know that I'm not a true Metallica fan. I never had a Metallica T-shirt, but I love the sound of this record because I am reawakening to the power of rock and roll, and this album is leading me back into it in that way.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
So
But
that was a roundabout way to get to your Metallica story. I hijacked your Metallica story for that reason.
Wait, don't leave. There will be music. I
That's
promise.
right. It's not just going to be stories. That's right.
right. All right. Tell me about this last one here. A Fifth of Beethoven by Walter Murphy.
Don't tell me you don't know this piece of music.
I probably do. It's not, but it's
Yeah.
Fifth of Beethoven, not Beethoven's Fifth, right? What's the take on it?
Oh, you are so cute, Brett. Okay. You're just young enough. You are just young enough that the name doesn't just strike terror and fear into your heart because you know what this piece of music is.
Okay.
Okay. It was on the soundtrack for Saturday Night Fever.
Okay.
And it was like, it went to the top of the pop charts in 1976.
I totally know it if I hear it, right?
Of course you do. Of course you do. Because it was a disco version of the Fifth of Beethoven. And this guy, Walter Murphy, was he was the arranger of the song. It was his record, and I loved it so much when I was 11 years old because it was like me discovering Gary Numan playing classical music. It was Beethoven on the pop charts, and it was crazy disco, and there was synthesizers, and there was a clavinet, and there was like an organ, and it was all the things that were coming into my mind when I was 11, when I was in a band already. I had my band Black Diamond, and I was listening to the radio, looking out for anything that had solo piano, and there were bits and pieces of like electronic music sneaking. And Gary Wright was on the radio with Dreamweaver, and Hall and Oates were on the radio with their electric pianos, and Queen. Of course, there was one electric piano on A Night of the Opera. On John Deacon was playing "You're My Best Friend" on a Wurlitzer, but a fifth of Beethoven was a complete instrumental with it was like all about the keyboards. So I freaked out on this thing. So I had the sheet music for this. Never sounded as good when I played it on the piano because it was not all about the piano. It was kind of the band arrangement, it was the groove with the rhythm section and stuff. But I loved it. So this was on my list of instrumentals because, again, this is a song like, man, I want to play this with a band. I think it would be so cool.
Oh.
And people, if you're old enough, you have to be old enough to appreciate it, or you have to be young enough to like be an investigative listener and understand like how music like this was not groundbreaking, but just like a fun thing to hear,
Ah, okay. So I got to go back. I'm going to be embarrassed when I hear this because I totally know it. I just
yes,
didn't recognize the title.
You totally, you totally know it. Walter Murphy also does music for Family Guy. He writes lots of music for different kinds of things. He does, I don't know if he does soundtracks, but he does like a lot of TV music and scores and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just a super cool guy. Do you remember there were these things called Stars on 45?
Yes, totally.
Remember Stars on 45?
Oh yeah.
And then there was like a whole, I think they were actually made in Europe. They came from Sweden.
They actually did come from Sweden. I just watched a really cool documentary on that.
Oh, I need to see it. But basically, they put on the drum machine, and then they would run through all the hits, right? Mm-hmm. So then there was the classical version of Stars on 45, and then they would get really, really specific, and there would be like the ABBA Stars on 45, and the Beatles, and the Stevie Wonder Stars on 45,
mm-hmm.
and they were all so cool. But I think what was cool that Walter Murphy and other guys would do these sort of albums that were kind of the same, where they would be disco classical records, and they had to be a little more creative, that they would have to do arrangements that weren't just based on the one beat kind of threading through it all. They would do each specific piece of music, which I loved. So,
I think that's so funny. I remember, and I know this is, now I'm thinking about it, it's similar to Stars on 45. And I remember how much that blew people's minds when it came out. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Like, especially
totally.
the Beatles ones, because it was like a Beatles medley. And like you said, basically somebody just pushed play on the drum machine and just ran through all the melodies.
Yeah.
Right? It was like, oh my God. It's
but
like
then they had a guy who sounded just like them. Like the sound of them was really good.
Right.
The ABBA one is fantastic as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, of course, ABBA, we're already in the disco world, so you could put on a beat and you could cover a pretty good number of ABBA hits with one beat,
Yeah.
which was pretty fun. But they got girls that sounded just like them, and if they were actually made in Sweden, that makes sense because the girls had the sound of Frida and Agneta, where they didn't, like, English was their second language, so they would pronounce the words in kind of a funny way, but they had that same kind of, there was a Nordic quality to their voices that was so perfect. They sounded just like the girls in ABBA.
Bonus points for knowing the names of the females in ABBA.
Oh, come on. Me? You know me.
I certainly do.
I met Frida one time at the opening of she came to the opening of Mamma Mia in Toronto in 2000. So
wow.
I met her for like a hot second, and I got her to sign my ABBA box set cover. So, yeah.
Wow. That's cool.
She's rock royalty. I never got to meet Agneta, though, but oh well.
Which one is which? The blonde or the brunette?
Agneta is the blonde and Frida is the brunette.
Okay.
Who also went through other awkward hair colors in the 80s. She had like those good kind of weird red hair colors as well, it was like a trendy thing for ladies in Europe to experiment with these henna kind of colors, and Frida went for all of them, and I loved it because she, sometimes I look back at pictures of myself from the 80s and I'm like, man, some of those hairstyles, but then it was what it was, you kind of went in the moment and you went for it.
You got to embrace that stuff, man. It was the 80s, and it was the time. Fully embrace it.
And I think and ABBA went through it in a much bigger way than I ever had to. Thank God. But they lived through those pictures, and the girls went through. I mean, Agnieszka really never changed her hair color because she was a beautiful blonde. But Frida went through colors and perms and headbands and no headbands. And
wow,
man, oh man,
I did not know that.
You live through it, but thank God the music kind of rises above it all. When you're just listening and not looking, thank God, the music survives.
Oh, absolutely, and continues to. Yeah.
Yep.
And likely will. ABBA is a force,
And we know, I mean, we haven't talked about it because we haven't revealed all the details of our collaborative project,
Mm-hmm.
but there will of course be ABBA songs involved because their music was such a huge part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Like for 15 years of my life, that was like my main thing was I was responsible for making their songs come to life 8 times a week on the Broadway.
That's right.
So how can I not include their music?
Exactly. One of the many, many cool surprises that we have in store for fans of Rob Preuss. Ladies and gentlemen,
that's right.
You are going to dig this. Get your tickets as soon as this thing launches because it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes.
Yeah. So that wraps up your song list here. I am very, very appreciative to be part of this, and I'm super excited, and I can't wait to get it rolling.
I am excited too.
Yeah, we've been doing Zoom calls to kind of piece this thing together, so I think we should probably schedule another one for next week if that's cool with you.
Yeah, for sure. We should also. I love when you post these episodes, and then I love to share a Spotify playlist as well. And I think the one that I sent to you is already public as well. So I'll post it. If you want to include it when you post it, totally do it. It'll be great.
Okay, I will do that. I need those.
Nice.
You should send over those selfies that you took from the Alma Combo too.
Oh yeah, totally. It's so funny. Like, what a whirlwind weekend. Today's right. Like, I've got pictures to go through from the Alma Combo show as well. But I drove home yesterday and like got up really early in the morning and drove. And I have taken so many pictures like since the weekend and have not really looked at any of them. But I will absolutely send them to you today.
All right. Awesome. Well, I'll use that in the promotion of the show.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
cool.
It'll be fun. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, man. Well, listen, thank you so much. Always fun.
You are welcome.
Always fun.
Are you fading in the music now?
Not quite yet.
Okay, I'm gonna wait because that's my favorite moment when you're like, and there, thank you, and then there it comes.
This has been No Sleep Till Sudbury with Brent Jensen. Is that the part you're talking about?
Yep.
Just before. All right. So let's do that right now.
You're gonna cut. Okay.
All right. Are you? I've never really done this before. This is kind of funny. All right. Do you have anything left to say?
I always do, but I'll shut the fuck up. I think it's funny. It's good. This is like when you watch a TV show and they say, we'll fix this in post, and then they just don't fix it, and then that's always the best part.
We're gonna leave a little bit of it in for sure.
Yeah.
All right. All right. This has been No Sleep Till Sudbury with Brent Jensen and my very, very, very special guest, Mr. Rob Preuss. Till next time, folks. Take good care.
Brent Jensen is the best-selling author of No Sleep Till Sudbury, Leftover People, and All My Favorite People Are Broken. All titles available in stores and on Amazon worldwide.